Hello and welcome to Freed Indeed Live. I'm your host, Kevin J. N. Hughes, and I have been working in biblical counseling now. So I want to cover some counseling topics here on Freed Indeed Live. And I have this series that I've started. I started with the gospel, and now I want us I'm using, um, I don't use this like verbatim, but Dr. Stuart Scott, General Counseling Suggestions, has this excellent resource. So if you're in biblical counseling or you're a counselee, um, this, I want this video series to be helpful to you. So, I'm going to be covering some topics that come up a lot in biblical counseling, and I'm starting with some things that I go through pretty much with every single person. So I've already shared the gospel. Now I'm sharing about what we call heart worship. So, first of all, let's take a look at what the biblical heart is. So I want to go to First Samuel 16, and we're going to now, I'm assuming most of you watching the show are at least somewhat familiar with First Samuel. In this passage, we know that God has decided to pass over King Saul. King Saul has been a naughty boy, and God has decided to give the kingdom to another. He hasn't yet revealed who that other is. So now he sends the prophet Samuel to go and say who this person is going to be. Samuel shows up at the house of Jesse, and Jesse is having his sons pass before him, and the eldest son comes, and this is what happens. When they came, he looked on Eliab, the oldest, and said, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look on his appearance, or his height, or his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." So, what does that mean? The Lord looks on the heart. Well, obviously, it doesn't mean the physical organ. So let's take a look at Proverbs 4, verse 23, and see. Proverbs 4:23 adds a little bit more to our description. It says, "Keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flow the springs of life." So here the heart is described as like a river, and from that river flow all of the issues of life. That means that everything righteous and everything wicked that comes from us is coming from the heart. Um, Now, oftentimes, people, so in other words, what we're seeing is that the heart is the inner man. The heart is the person. The heart is who we are truly, who we are when no one is looking, you might say. The heart is what is in the deepest part of us, and all of our good or evil comes from that. So, this is why all change has to begin in the heart, because if we don't begin in the heart, then we're only changing external behaviors, but we're not changing who we are. So, a lot of times people say that um, you can't know what's in a person's heart, but Jesus has a different perspective. Now, Jesus in Mark chapter 7 is in a dispute with some Pharisees, and then some scribes come up, and the scribes basically say that they take the Pharisees more seriously because the Pharisees are better at fasting. And the reason why the Pharisees are better at, or rather at keeping the dietary laws, sorry. And the reason why the Pharisees are better at keeping the dietary laws is because they wash their hands. And Jesus' response to this is rather interesting. He says this, And he called the people to him again and said, "Hear me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing outside of a person that by going into him can defile him, but the things that come out of a person are what defile him." And when he had entered into the house, he left the people. And his disciples asked him about the parable, and he said to them, "Then are you also without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into a person from the outside cannot defile him, since it enters not his heart but his stomach and is expelled?" Thus he declared all foods clean. But then he said, "What comes out of a person is what defiles him. For from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, coveting, wickedness, deceit, sensuality, envy, pride, slander, and foolishness. All these evil things come from within, and they defile a person." So a person is not defiled by food or drink. A person is defiled by the things that come out of them, by their behaviors. Why does that defile them? Well, because Jesus says that it's through those things that you can see the wickedness of a person's heart. So, contrary to popular belief, we can actually know what's in someone's heart. We know what's in someone's heart because it's what's in their behavior. So, what we've seen so far from scripture is that the heart is the inner person, and that inner person is revealed by our outer works, whether those works are good or bad. So here's a practical implication of what I'm saying. James chapter 4. James 4, the first verses of James 4 say, "What causes quarrels and what causes fights among you? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? You desire and do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask. You do not ask, or you ask, but you do not receive because you ask wrongly, so as to spend it on your passions." So, what is the problem here? The problem is the passions of the heart, the idols of the heart. And we are conflicts and battles that happen with our loved ones, with our neighbors, with the people in our lives, happen because of the war that is raging within us with our passions. So Jesus tells us that we can know what's in a person's heart by looking at their behavior. We can see what's in people's hearts by seeing their behaviors. And then we see from James chapter 4 that one of the practical applications of this teaching is that it is out of the heart that all of our conflict arises. So this is how the heart works in biblical counseling. This is why all change has to begin in the heart, and why all change is heart change. But there's good news, and that good news is that God has promised to give us a new heart. He promises that he'll take away our heart of stone and give to us a heart of flesh. What that means is that he gives us a heart that is responsive to him. So in our new birth, God gives us a new heart, and that new heart is responsive to his will. So then we live out the life of a Christian for the rest of our lives, and we work out that transformation that has taken place within. So this is what we need when we come into biblical counseling, no matter who we are, no matter where we're coming from. This is the basis of all true change. We need heart change. We need to change how we need to not just change our behaviors, but actually change the reasoning behind them. And I already have lots of videos on how to do that. I have the Thoughts Determine Our Lives book club. I have the Ephesians 4:23 and 24 video, but I'm going to be talking about that a lot more throughout this series because that's kind of the point. However, I just wanted to release this series or this particular video and just very simply and briefly cover what it is we're talking about when we talk about the biblical heart. So thank you very much for watching. Please do share this with your friends, especially your friends who are either counselors or in counseling, so that they too can be freed indeed. God bless.